Hi, everybody. I wanted to share with you in the next couple minutes my plan to fix Surfside's flooding problem. Over the past 10 years, we've had politicians promising to fix the problem for the people on Abbott, and they did nothing. Recently, we had a really bad drenching, and all of a sudden, we started to see that not only is it Abbott Avenue, but it's many other parts of the town that are having this problem. So, while the people on Abbott have been suffering for 10 years with a serious problem, most of us are just starting to feel the effects of what they've been going through for 10 years. And of course, they have it the worst because they live in the lowest part of our town. Before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about what had been proposed in the past, and that had been to basically make the pipes in the ground bigger and add some pumps that would pump the water out. Now, there were three solutions that were talked about. The first solution was about $1 million. The second was a couple $1 million, and the third one was $3 or $4 million. All of those solutions do not stop the water from still going into the houses. They don't stop the initial surge of the water coming up. What they do is move the water out faster. The $1 million solution, for example, would take a 5-hour flood and move it out in 4. The $2 million solution would take the 5-hour flood and move it out in 2.5. Move it out quicker. And instead of a 5-hour problem, it's a 3-hour problem. And the $4 million solution would turn a 5-hour flooding problem potentially into a 1-hour flooding problem. But like I said earlier, that doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't keep the water out of the houses. And at the end of the day, the tide is coming up. Even with those solutions, it's not sustainable, and it doesn't make us resilient, which is something that we want to be into. Anyway, giant structures are moved all the time, and I want to start the discussion by showing you this. Here's a lighthouse being moved away from a cliff. Obviously, the lighthouse is a zillion tons, and it has to be jacked up, and then it has to be put on a track and moved. This slide shows that not only can they be moved, but they obviously have to be raised to be put on the tracks. And this is just another example of a gigantic structure, not only being raised, but moved. Here it is again, raising the structure and moving it. The moving it is even more complicated than the raising it, but again, they're moving it away from a cliff. They have to do it, and it's very possible, which is the point I'm trying to make here initially. The next point is that I don't know, some may have not known this, but entire houses can be lifted up, put on lorries, and moved to an entirely different location. You basically, we're going to see how they do that, but just understand that that can be done. Here you see a gentleman that has taken his one-story house and turned it into a two-story house. Now, this may or may not be in a flood area. It looks like it probably is up north because I see the snowplow. But the bottom line is, if it is in a flood area, you can see he's going to have to put stairs up to that entrance there to his house on the right. The lower areas will not be useful for living areas because if it is a flood area, all he's done is protect the upper part of his house. If it's not a flood area, well then obviously he can use that. But for our purposes, if this was done, and you're going to see that this can be done, those garage areas could be used for cars. However, in a storm, those cars would have to be taken out if you didn't want them to be damaged and put somewhere else. Here this gentleman has, with a smile on his face, has jacked up his house. You can see that he's really jacked it up, probably 7 or 8 feet. You can see the garage over there on the right and the front door over there on the left. Obviously, this is the first stage. You can see that they put those steel structures in underneath the house, which is supporting the house, and they have lifted the house up. The next step is to put the permanent stands in underneath the house, which will hold the house permanently, which we're going to see. But just so you know, you can see if this gentleman was in a flood area, you can see that his house is now safe. Once he gets it secured, there will never be a flooding problem again. This is the next stage where the supports are put in underneath the house. Obviously, this house hasn't been raised as high, but it is raised nonetheless. This is one of the three options that you can use for raising your house and putting the structures in underneath. We'll go to the next step here, which is to basically enclose those support structures. Now, as you can see, the front door is 6 feet up, and you'll need to address that. But the living areas for this house are now up and away and out of danger of any flooding. You can see obviously the ground, the elevation of the ground around it has not been raised. Anything, cars, anything like that would still have to be addressed. But we're moving forward now, and we've enclosed the house. So once that gets done, it will look like the next slide. Here you go. That is the finished product, where you can see it almost looks like the house was built to be up like that, except for the stairway going up to the front door. You probably would never know that that house was lifted up and that there were supports put up inside underneath that house. You can still see in this picture that the garage, or the driveway is still at the old level, which would put the cars in danger. Now you could put some racks up there and surround it with landscaping, or you could bring in fill and raise the whole yard. But in order to protect the living areas, the owner of this house has done just that. So he would not have a flooding problem anymore for the contents in his house. What are the costs and the three types of elevation options? For an average home, between $18,000 and $80,000 to raise it. Now, most homes in Surfside are probably not average. They're probably bigger than average, but this is just to give us a beginning point to have the discussion. You can see it's a 2020 cost estimate, and the estimates go from $18,000 on the low end to $80,000 on the high end. And again, that's just for your average house. There are three different types of ways to raise your house: pier and beam, column post, and pilings. And we'll go through those three quickly right now. Here's the column and post. You can see that basically the house, the older brown wood on the top is the bottom of the house, the joists supporting the floors, and then you see you've got new beams underneath there, and those beams are attached to the old joists, which is a hurricane thing, so it's all one piece and very strong. You can see the piling, not the pilings, but the structures there going down to concrete slabs, which would be poured underneath the house. You can see that it's enclosed all the way around, and that's a very, very possible option for residents in Surfside. Also, many of the houses in Surfside are built on footers, which you can see here. You can see the old elevation where the dirt is, and you can see where the footer's been raised up. The house gets jacked up and then set back down on the new footer, and you're off to the races. That's option number two. The most expensive option is the pilings foundation. Now, I think we've all seen this in the Florida Keys. We even have a house here in Surfside that was recently built. Some people like it, some people don't. Obviously, the aesthetics would be a consideration of the residents and the Planning and Zoning Board. But for purposes today, I just wanted to show you what the three options look like. And this is the last of the three options, and the most expensive, by the way. What are the cost savings for raising a home besides the increase in value? Of course, the minute you raise the house and you get it out of danger and it's not a flood risk, the value goes up. But also your premiums for flood insurance go down depending upon how much you raise the house. Most houses in Surfside are at base flood elevation or greater. You can see how drastic the savings are as you go up. Once you get above 6 feet, the savings are really, really amazing, and you almost don't have flood insurance costs. I know, because I've got a building in Miami Beach that's on stilts with parking underneath, and the flood insurance costs were almost zero. Lastly, how can the town of Surfside help its residents? Well, my plan is that we should offer residents who raise their homes the following incentives to do so. The following terms would be available to any homeowner in Surfside for a loan up to a maximum of $35,000. The town of Surfside will provide a direct interest-free loan for up to 10 years secured by a lien on the home for up to 35% of the cost to raise the home. The loan would be due and payable to the town upon either the sale of the home or after 10 years have elapsed, whichever occurs first. The town of Surfside would assist homeowners in obtaining additional grants for raising their homes to make up for the other 65% of the cost, or they could go get a loan at their local bank to do the work, knowing that the work they're doing is a huge investment in their home and will always pay off because the value of the home would go up substantially. The town of Surfside will work to find a contractor who will provide a low fixed cost to raise all of the flood-prone homes in Surfside, thus provide a large potential group discount for homeowners undertaking the work, sort of like a cookie-cutter situation where you could have a contractor that would literally go up and down the street and have all the systems and equipment in place to raise the homes quickly and efficiently. With the $3 million that had been discussed to improve the drainage speed but not stop the water from going into the homes, which at the end of the day is what we're trying to accomplish really, and save and make the most wise investment with our precious dollars that we can, we could raise over 85 homes in Surfside with that $3 million. So that would be a huge, huge step. And by the way, that $3 million or $4 million that we discussed was only to solve the problem in the small Abbott area avenue. So the cost to redo the drainage throughout the whole city could be multiples of that, high multiples of that, and not even solve the problem. Raising the homes solves the problem forever. Anyway, I wanted to start the discussion. I look forward to hearing your opinions on the subject. I can be reached at 305-517-1175 anytime, or at my email, mayor@townofsurfsidefl.gov. Thanks for listening. I look forward to speaking to you soon.